Okay, we're recording now. Hi there. I'm Jeremy Nichols. I'm the Climate and Energy Program Director for WildEarth Guardians, and I have with me here.
Lindsay Larris. I'm the Wildlife Program Director at WildEarth Guardians. Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me today, Lindsay. This is going to be the first of what we hope is a series of videos featuring WildEarth Guardians staff, and just trying to take advantage of the moment that we're in, where we're all so reliant on virtual engagement to share a little more about the work that we do, the people behind the work, and really the faces within WildEarth Guardians. And Lindsay is our wildlife program director. She's working on some amazing issues, trying to protect cute, fuzzy critters, and really makes me feel inadequate a lot of times because I'm the one focused on like fracking and coal mining. And I would much rather many days be working to save wolves, grizzly bears, and lynx and whatnot. But
They're not all cute and fuzzy critters. Sometimes they're scaly.
sometimes they're scaly, sometimes they're creepy crawly. It's true, and that's what's cool about WildEarth Guardians is we're advocating for all the creatures because they're all important for healthy ecosystems and for a beautiful planet. So anyway, Lindsay, thanks so much for joining me today. And you're based in Denver, right?
Yes, I am. I am now really based live from my home in West Highlands, Denver.
Yes, and
Foreseeable future, yes.
I'm here in my home in Golden, Colorado, so fairly near you, but so far away at this moment. So we're all surviving. Are you hanging in there, Lindsay? Are you staying sane?
Yeah, most days, most days. I'm lucky enough to live by a grocery store. I have some good pets that I live around, and yeah, and it's a beautiful day here in Denver, at least today.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, and it's awesome. I mean, we're pretty fortunate. We're continuing to work. We know there's a lot of people out there struggling way more, and a lot of people on the front lines, even trying to help respond to this crisis, both in the service industry and in the healthcare sector. And our hearts go out to them, and we're with them. We're doing our part to stay home, try to slow the spread of this virus and weather this pandemic. So crazy times, but for WildEarth Guardians and its wildlife program, things continue. We're still stepping up to defend wildlife in some big ways. Lindsay, why don't you talk a little bit about what the wildlife program is all about with WildEarth Guardians, and maybe share with us some of what's keeping you most busy these days?
Sure. So I've been with WildEarth Guardians for, I think it's been just over a year. It was my 1 year anniversary a few
Oh yeah,
days
that's
ago.
right.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So the wildlife program at WildEarth Guardians works with the other programs to protect the health and ecosystems in the American West, and we focus on wildlife. We have kind of two distinct programs within the wildlife program, as I like to see it. One is looking at wildlife services and coexistence within wildlife services, how to promote non-lethal management of our wildlife, both at a federal level with wildlife services, which is an agency whose job it is to manage wildlife, which mostly means to kill wildlife for protection of livestock and other interests.
Right.
So we do that. We work at the state level to try to increase policies of coexistence. Right now I'm in Colorado working on some things with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department as they're coming out with cougar management plans. And again, cougar management means killing of cougars, which is unfortunately a lot of our wildlife practices. We also have a big Endangered Species Act piece of our work.
Yeah, no acronyms allowed.
Sorry. We look to protect species and their habitats that are most critically endangered within the American West. And then we will file petitions with the Fish and Wildlife Service and challenge some of those decisions if we don't think that they found the right thing. In this new administration that we're in now, the Trump administration has protected far less species under the Endangered Species Act than previous administrations. They've also worked really hard, the same with your practice, Jeremy, to gut and amend the Endangered Species Act as best they could to protect the interests of special interest groups over those of our vulnerable species on this planet. So what I am working on, I have staff in 3 states, which is great, which is a great thing about Guardians. We're spread out. We've been doing the remote thing since before it was trendy to do so.
Right. Yeah, so you have a staffer in Oregon, right? In Western Oregon? And then
Yes.
one in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yes, and then one in Denver.
Another one in Denver, that's right.
Yeah. So we have those 3 states pretty well covered, but we do work across the 11 Western states. And as I said, we're looking at ways to protect the Endangered Species Act from being taken apart by the Trump administration. We're looking to amend contracts with wildlife services, and we're looking to take away the tools of wildlife services that are the most cruel, such as use of M44s, traps, and snares.
Now,
They're just,
explain what are M44s again?
it's very hard to not use acronyms or abbreviations. M44s are sodium cyanide bombs that are placed oftentimes on public lands, just sort of waiting for animals to approach them. And then when they go and sniff this device, it will blow up the animal. And it's just horribly cruel. They're indiscriminate. You don't know if it's going to be the coyote you're targeting or if it's going to be some sort of like lovely endangered species. Not that coyotes are not lovely, but that, you know, we want, if there's going to be work to be done to manage wildlife, it needs to be done in a very targeted way. And it should be a last resort to do lethal management of wildlife is our mantra here.
Well, and I love the approach that you take with the wildlife program at Guardians, because yes, it's all about like leveraging the science and trying to conserve animals, protect imperiled species, but it's also trying to inject some heart into the mix and some compassion and a recognition that these animals, they do have a right to live, they have a right to coexist with us, and that we should be fighting back because of the cruelty of some of these practices. You know, science is one thing, but you know, there's also just the value of life, and I love how we integrate both. It feels like, and I think that's really important, because as much as we use our brains and want to follow our brains, there needs to be a little heart in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're in a society now that, at least with our cats and dogs at home, we think of them as having feelings and internal lives. And, you know, I think more and more people are saying, wait a minute, if my dog feels certain things, of course, a wolf is going to feel certain things. And, you know, your mountain lion and your cat, and I kind of look at those as ways to bring people into the mix by using the values and using, like, if you love your own animals, how can you not have any value for the life of animals that exist outside of your home?
Yeah, that's so true. And it's a challenge in the American West, because culturally, I mean, you go back to the colonization in the American West, it was very much about dominating nature. And there's very much the spirit that like the land and its wildlife, they exist to serve us, or they're an impediment to our domination. And, you know, changing that mindset it's really hard, but I feel like it's happening in some small but significant ways. I feel like here in Colorado, for example, the first gentleman, Marlon Reese, is very much an ardent wildlife conservation advocate, and he's actually spoken in support of WildEarth Guardians work and other conservation organizations work. Really cool to see for a Rocky Mountain state like Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Colorado has a lot of promise to bring more in the future for wildlife protection, for oil and gas development going by the wayside. It has a place to actually be a progressive state, and that's why it's a great place for both of us to be right now.
Yeah, which, you know, speaks to like there's a ballot initiative that's going to be coming up for a vote this fall that is about bringing wolves back to Colorado. And I know I'm oversimplifying it. There's a lot more details, but I think that initiative itself, the fact that it made it on the ballot, speaks to the changing mindset of Colorado and the opportunities that exist to further advance wildlife conservation.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the power of people to bring that onto a ballot initiative, seeing that this work maybe wasn't being done by the government here.
Right.
And this is an important issue to balance the ecosystems. So there has been a lot of movement on the ground of groups of people to bring something like this together. And I don't know if you've heard about this sort of movement going on at every night, people getting together and howling.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting to see, and kind of connecting that when people start thinking about it and be like, wait, like we're all connected to nature. We're all part of that. We're howling like wolves, and yet we're demonizing wolves at the same time. And maybe we can use this opportunity to think about how we're all connecting through this howl in the same way that wolves do that.
Yeah, it's really amazing just how people are connecting on a very primal level with that, for a lot of different reasons. It's, you know, conveying support, solidarity with like healthcare workers, but also just like getting out the frustration, getting out the sorrow, the isolation, feeling connected even, which, you know, that is the essence of a wolf howl. It's connection. And like I heard it last night, our neighbors were out, and our dog, she was like, what's going on? What's happening? Barking a little bit. And it's so cool. And it seems like every night it's getting louder and louder. And I can't wait for 8 p.m. tonight. and especially with our full moon still. It's an amazing scene.
Right, that's right. Who knows what's going to happen tonight? It's always an
um, so I want to take a step back. I want to ask you, what brought you to WildEarth Guardians in the first place?
Yeah, so as I said, I came here about a year ago after working for another organization more focused on animal rights issues. I saw Guardians as this opportunity to do something really great and bold and courageous. The organization, as I've been following it before coming here, just takes like really big, bold steps. It's not afraid to go out and really make statements, look for change in ways maybe other groups are afraid to do. And giving our staff, which I still see happening now, so many opportunities to be creative and to be leaders in their own work and not have to follow a bureaucratic system, which we see in bigger companies. And sometimes that's a problem in bigger organizations. And I think that Guardians really lives that mantra: be bold, be courageous, do your work. And everybody has this like sort of universal respect for that within the culture.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's amazing to be with an organization that can be so nimble and so empowering of its staff. So, well, so I guess the next big question I wanted to ask is, obviously the pandemic is front and center for so many of us right now, and very real concerns over our health of our families and communities. But the work goes on, and it's not only because like it's our job, it's because it remains important. And I wanted to see, can you speak a little bit to just the importance of your work in this age, this age of the pandemic? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the pandemic has brought to light a lot of sort of these imbalances in ecosystems and how this has created sort of the perfect storm to have a virus that spreads around, to have, our global economy and all of that. And, there's still a little bit of discussion about where this actually came from, but some of the topics are like live markets in China selling animals that have their systems disrupted. So they're stressed out, they're producing these viruses. So when you have like your wildlife and your ecosystems all out of whack, you create this sort of perfect conditions for something like this to happen. And I think it's really making people think about, wow, biodiversity is really important. That's not just something a bunch of hippies out there in the world think about. This is something that has real world impacts. And, we're looking at that now and looking at ways to create a better, more balanced, sustainable culture across the American West that will protect future generations, the health of humans, as well as wildlife. Part of the reason that the wolf reintroduction is such an important issue to folks out here is because wolves are these apex predators that keep ecosystems balanced. And where they've come back, like in Yellowstone, we've seen a lot of changes in the way that rivers run, in the way that things grow on the ground. And we as humans just want to dominate everything. And we've kind of thrown things out of whack over the years by doing that. And we're hoping now to use this as saying, we have this opportunity. We're all in our homes now. Wildlife is going out. We're seeing weird things happening with wildlife in the streets and in Denver. And I think there's goats running around in Wales somewhere, taking over the town. But if we just give nature a break for a little bit, we can maybe reset. And we have a great opportunity now to try and reset and prioritize our values moving forward after the pandemic subsides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really just underscores how important biodiversity is for resilience, for the resilience of our health, our ecosystems. You mentioned the wolves in Yellowstone. The return of the wolves led to less overgrazing of streamside habitats by elk, and that has improved water quality. I mean, that's one example of wolves mean cleaner water, and wolves mean more vibrant ecosystems. And it's amazing here with all this talk about the coronavirus and its impacts being worsened because of environmental degradation, in particular air pollution, and impacts it has on our health and how it's made us more vulnerable. So I hope it's an eye opener for a lot of people. I know, obviously, not that we've been woke or anything, but I hope people start to see it like, oh, the path forward here is very different than where we've been, and that's what we hope happens.
Right, that we need to change our behavior, or not just say, oh, this is one little blip and let's just go back to normal, because I don't think that we can ignore something that's happened that has never happened in our lifetime. And I don't think really has happened since 1918. And that's a big gap of time for, and I really, really think that people are becoming more aware, and hopefully, use this opportunity to think about their own lives and how they can protect biodiversity and wild places and wildlife going forward.
So that's a great segue to one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, and maybe you kind of touched on it there already, but wanted to ask, what's keeping you inspired and optimistic in this time of crisis?
You know, I've been watching all these videos, and I'm sure you have as well, about these wildlife returning to places that haven't been, and kind of walking around Denver and seeing geese just relaxing, and you know how amazing it is when we don't have human influence out there quite as much, at how resilient wildlife is about coming back. And I think that that is really wonderful to see. We are in administration, especially in Colorado right now, where there is a lot more movement towards working with groups like ours towards wildlife policies. I'm seeing more change in that. I'm really optimistic at the outcome of the 2020 election. Could be something really positive to move forward with, and that, you know, there'll be a reset of values across the country, and our treatment of vulnerable populations from humans across the spectrum to endangered species.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I hope for a lot of people, I know I've felt it, just like seeing the fragility of our society just really be laid bare so vividly. You know, people who were living on a shoestring, living on a thread, and just to see like how easily that thread can get unraveled and where that leaves people. It's amazing just how vulnerable so many people are because of inequities, because of, economic progress benefiting a privileged few and not the whole. So hopefully that will carry through the rest of the year and through the election and influence people to vote.
I mean, look at Wisconsin. People still got out there. They knew the threats were there, and they still went out and voted. That, I think, is, pretty inspiring to see.
It's pretty inspiring. Kind of unbelievable that something like that could unfold. So the last question I wanted to ask is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think when people want to know how they can get involved and how they can help do with our work, we're trying to become much more focused on our members, our supporters, and giving them the tools that they need in order to be advocates in their own backyard. And that's a shift that Guardians is making right now. We had been planning to do it, but it's just more opportune now that people are home and they want to know, what can I do to make changes? So I think that folks should continue to look at our website and look for opportunities, follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, looking for these opportunities in order to get involved and to get engaged. And of course, if you're able to make a donation, that's always appreciated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People should definitely keep tabs on our Facebook page. It's WildEarth Guardians on Facebook. We're posting all our various events, and those events include opportunities to show up to meetings like before wildlife commissions, because they're all going online now. So that opens up an opportunity for people who, like here in Colorado, the Parks and Wildlife Commission, they would hold a meeting in Denver, and not everybody can get to Denver, but now they're doing online meetings. Like people from all over the state can show up. So really tremendous opportunities. What's that?
No, I was also going to add that we do something like not just the place, but like during the middle of the day during business hours. And now, for example, Colorado Parks and Wildlife is having a virtual open house where you can just stop by between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. on their Facebook event. We're going to be sending out information about that. But I think that is giving a lot more people the opportunity to speak their voice. And we want to empower people to do that and give them the tools to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we're doing the best we can to try to share all these opportunities. So stay tuned, stay plugged in to our Facebook page. Sign up for our email list if you haven't already. Go to wildearthguardians.org and there's a link there to sign up for our email list. And then just keep tabs on our website, where it's constantly updated with news, updates, perspective. We're trying to keep things fresh and keep people informed and engaged, even as we're hunkered down. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Lindsay. And thank you to the Wildlife Program. Thank you, Lindsay, for joining me today. We're going to try to keep this up and feature other WildEarth Guardian staff and talk about their work. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and hang in there. Stay strong, stay healthy, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks.